to this week's Movie Math, where women made their triumphant yet also rare return to the top of the box office. Yes, while it fell short of taking the #1 spot, The Heat was still a huge win for everyone involved. While industry insiders had predicted an opening on par with Melissa McCarthy's Identity Thief, Sandra Bullock's added star power helped propel the comedy to an opening of $40 million. That's not only the biggest debut of McCarthy's short career, but of Bullock's 20 years in the biz as well. This also makes director Paul Feig 2 for 2 after Bridesmaids, giving him significant pull in the comedy arena alongside the likes of Judd Apatow and The Hangover's Todd Phillips. The Heat's success is also an interesting development in the debate over whether or not women are as funny as men. Time magazine ran an article last week pointing out that despite the success of Bridesmaids and even Thelma and Louise, Hollywood still doesn't have much faith in women. And we're not just talking about being funny. While women have a very large profile in the pages of comics, where are their comic book movies? Sure, Catwoman and Elektra flopped at the box office, but wasn't that more of a quality and casting issue? Perhaps as women get a steady footing in the comedy genre, they can move into other genres as well, thanks to men like Paul Feig. And maybe femme-friendly Joss Whedon as well, who I'm sure is watching these developments very closely. Feig made quite a point of telling audiences they needed to see The Heat if they wanted to see more comedies with women, and even if that was just a marketing ploy, it worked. And let's hope Feig truly feels that way, as he'll surely be working with women on his next film as well, as once Hollywood feels you have a knack for something, they like you to keep doing it. As for men, this weekend they began to cannibalize themselves at the box office, something that has been feared for some months now with an overcrowded release schedule. While Family Pick Monsters University held on to the #1 spot with an impressively small 44% drop, World War Z fell 55% in its second weekend. Anything under 60 is okay for a blockbuster, but still, Paramount was hoping for sleeper hit status, not business as usual. Stellar word of mouth for this zombie pick should have translated into a drop in the 40s, or if the frame hadn't been so crowded, maybe even the 30s. But at least it did lead the weekend worldwide. Then White House Down took a double hit, not only having to compete with World War Z and Man of Steel for the same demographics, but also coming so soon after Olympus Has Fallen. Indeed, White House Down failed to even match its predecessor's debut, despite costing almost twice as much to make and sporting far more star power. This is a huge blow for Channing Tatum, his lowest box office debut since Fighting back in 2009. Expect the budding star to not only refocus his efforts on 22 Jump Street, but in turning Magic Mike into that franchise. He'd also do well to find another romantic comedy or drama. As for Jamie Foxx, hey, he's Electro. As for Man of Steel, it fell another 50% in its third weekend, yet has passed $500 million worldwide. That already puts it ahead of Marvel's debut solo flicks Thor and Captain America, and while Man of Steel is unlikely to join the billion-dollar club at this point, it's still a green light for Warner Brothers to start building their DC Cinematic Universe. With both Jeff Robinov and Legendary Pictures parting ways with the studio, though, who knows what that DC Cinematic Universe will look like? But considering that Man of Steel was not a resounding success, one can see why Kevin Tsujihara might actually be eager to get some fresh eyes on the studio's DC movies. As I've said before, with all his new hires, why doesn't Tsujihara hire someone whose sole responsibility is to oversee the DC Cinematic Universe, as Kevin Feige does for Disney? Elsewhere, This Is the End enjoyed another small drop as it hopes to survive the summer box office apocalypse long enough to cross the century mark. Speaking of the century mark, Now You See Me was able to pass it this weekend, while worldwide, Fast and Furious 6 is closing in on the $700 million mark, the biggest haul of the franchise yet. And as we reach the halfway point of the summer movie season, let's take a look at 2013 so far. Comic book movies continue to dominate domestically, with Iron Man 3 and Man of Steel taking the top 2 spots to date. And Disney can boast 3 movies in the top 10, validating the recent evaluation by financial analysts that Disney is the biggest media company in the world. But maybe Warner Brothers would want to challenge that, as when it comes to the worldwide box office, they have 3 of the top 10 movies, 2 of which are The Hangover Part 3 and The Great Gatsby, both pushed far into the black thanks to foreign audiences. As for this coming holiday weekend, Disney is set to have their first flop of the year with The Lone Ranger, expected to pull in just $35 million. Meanwhile, Despicable Me 2, which is already doing strong business overseas, looks to open big, yet not Monsters University big. Bottom line though, with so many movies crowded into theaters, Hollywood is surely hoping that Americans will spend much of this 4-day 4th of July weekend in a darkened room. And that's the weekend box office. I'm Grace Randolph, and we just did some movie math. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll go beyond the trailer for these other top movies.